Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Mat Chat, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear like I am wearing, and at least one of our guests is wearing. I can't tell the other one. They're both wearing it. They got the memo.
Yes, so, for sure. Go Nike Wrestling, baby.
The pride of Minnesota goes without. These guys don't really need an introduction, but Doug and Brandon Paulson. I'm a coach's son, so this is a podcast I'm really going to enjoy. Thank you guys for coming on with me.
You bet.
Are you going to enjoy it? We're not sure yet. We'll see.
Okay. So I'm going to jump around a little bit, but the reason why I wanted to have you guys on, Doug, you were very kind this summer with junior duels, and I feel like I built a little bit of a relationship with you, got to grab dinner with you down there. And Brandon, what your kids did at the age group Worlds was pretty special.
Yeah.
The crowd was not big, which was actually cool because we could hear you yelling during and afterwards. No, I mean, honestly, that's the one good upside of not a big crowd. Like, let's go. So,
David, there could have been a big crowd. You still would have heard them.
That's probably fair. Okay, when I'm wrong, I'm wrong. We heard you more clearly, Brandon, than we would have normally. So, and Doug told me a couple stories, which I think are okay to share. We'll talk about them, but let's start with the Worlds, Brandon. Yeah. I know there were watch parties all over. I actually texted Doug when Volk won. Tell me about, obviously for people that don't know, an Olympic silver medalist. I was looking at your Wikipedia, like 16-time national champion, age group all the way up. So not your first rodeo, to say the least. But I would guess most of the guys I know that coach actually are happier for their athletes than what they won themselves.
It's great to see athletes really achieve their goals, right? And it's to me an athlete-centered sport, and I had an interview there at Worlds, and they put in so much time and put so much on the line as far as nothing's guaranteed, and there's so many athletes that can achieve what they want. So when you have a guy that believes in himself or guys that believe in themselves and live right and do the right things and listen and are coachable, and their parents are the same way, you get excited when they achieve their goals. And that's kind of what I am. I try to bring excitement to the practice room. Every wrestler is different how you coach them. Actually, the two wrestlers at Junior Worlds, they were very laid back, but sometimes you need to get them going, right? And both were very confident in themselves. And it was a great summer, and I think it's important that they do enjoy themselves and make sure they know that their coaches are proud of them. And for me, I was so excited for Jory and for Bennett, and Coy Hopke also won a world title. I wasn't there, but I was screaming at home, screaming at my television or my computer. And, it's amazing being at the World Championships. I think that was my 14th World Championship I've been to. I'm not able to make it all the time. We've had a lot of guys go, and sometimes it's during Fargo, and sometimes we have kids doing other things or whatever. But when I get to go with my athletes, man, it's awesome, and it's always come back and always worth it. And I love to do it. I love the sport.
When you mentioned 14, I looked over at Doug, and he had a very proud look on his face. And so even Doug, when like I said, I texted you, when Volk won, and I'm sure you had a big watch party. Like, what's that like as a dad to see, again, like these are in some ways almost like, Brandon's kids, like their surrogate family for sure. Right. Like, so when these kids win and your son has a direct impact on them, what is that like, watching?
Ben and Brandon's shoes before, once he hit 18, I'd like to say I coached him until he was 30, but I really didn't. I was more his manager. I was in his corner. I kept him going, but he was way above the technique that I could show them. So, but I got to be there all the time, and I got to see what it took to get to that level. And I'd like to say I was at 5 world championships and only 1 Olympics, but they're the best. I mean, all the wrestling that I've watched, they just have so much excitement, and the level of talent at them throughout the world is just amazing. So when Brandon gets to do that and go, and he's took on Deichler, and I mean, the guys that he's had, it takes so much for a coach to get one guy to that level. For him to get 5 guys or 6 guys is crazy out of one club. I mean, some states don't have that, much less one club.
We're going to talk about the club and the wall for sure. So it's interesting though, Doug, you said something, and I'm interested in both perspectives, but I'll ask you, Brandon, as the son and as a coach, right? Like parents love their kids, but sometimes they don't love them in the most productive way. Like sometimes you've got helicopter parents. That just exists in every club in America. So this isn't any slight on anybody at Pinnacle. But like what your dad said was, hey, at a certain point, the level of technique my son needed to continue to grow was past my grasp. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but I think that's an accurate statement. And then I handed my son off to people I trusted. I'm again, sort of summarizing, but more of a manager and more of a parent and less of a coach.
Yeah.
When you have kids that are coming in and every mom and dad has an opinion on how their kid needs to be treated a little bit differently, and you guys obviously have a formula for success up there, how is, that's part of the coaching part they don't tell you when you start a club, that there's personal management skills involved there, right?
Well, it's really the hardest part for me. It still is. And, coming in when Jared Lawrence is a co-owner of Pinnacle with me, and coming in when we started coaching, we really don't want any drama. It's like, we want them to trust us. And even as new coaches, we wanted them to trust us, and most of them did. But when most of them do, that doesn't mean all of them do. And still to this point, with the success we've had, it's still sometimes that's the hardest part for me, is like they don't see that they should trust us, trust the process. We have a plan. We have 325 kids, and we want the best for every kid. And really, and that's how, as a coach, we want to get kids better, right? Better at wrestling. We want to be better people, but it's like, that's our goal. It's not, and so it is. And we try to help teach the parents as well. And it's not like we know all. We make mistakes all the time as coaches and as people. We don't know all, but we try to teach the parents as well. We try to actually most of the time keep them out of the corner, even though I coach my own son and my dad did coach me. There are certain situations where it works, but a lot of the situations are so much emotion involved as a coach, as a dad, that it's really hard to coach your own kid. And so we have a lot of the, if you look around the high schools and whatnot, or the youth, their kids still come to our club and they send them off and they trust us. And that's a compliment for us. And we enjoy coaching everybody and love to have the coaches watch practice and learn as well. And, for us, I'm a full-time coach, right? So that's what I do for a living. So I study it all the time. It's not like I am stagnant. What I did in high school is not what I'm doing now. This is a full-time thing. It's not a 2-hour a day thing. And so we try to, Jared and I and our coaching staff try to get better all the time and look at what's new, what's happening, how we're winning, how we're losing, how the best in the world, how the best in the, in the NCAAs, how the best in the, you watch the best high school kids, which, man, there's a lot that comes from them as well. So we're always trying to learn. So I got off tangent a little bit there.
No, it's a great answer.
No, I mean, I think to really, it's hard for some of the parents to see, and they want what's best for their kids. And we understand that. And we want what's best for all of our kids. So,
yeah, I had a college coach tell me one time when I was coaching back in college, and he said, "You want to know if a kid will go home after a month or not?" I go, "Yeah, for sure." And he goes, "Here's the test." He goes, "Ask the mom what she's going to do if the kid calls after 4 weeks and says, Coach is being mean to me and he's picking on me and he made me run. He goes, if the mom says you made a promise, stick it out. He goes, the kid will stay. Because the dad's going to make him stay, most of the time. He goes, but if the mom's like, well, if he's being mean to you, come on home. He goes, at some point you're going to be mean to him. That's just part of being a freshman.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing it's no different than the beginning of the club. Tell me about how Pinnacle started. Because your dad told me a very cool story about Deichler, which I want to get to. But tell me how Pinnacle started.
I don't remember the story.
Yeah, right. Well, we'd had a cocktail too, Doug. I mean, that was part of my plan. Get a couple cocktails and then that's truth serum. So,
I know, and he can talk, can he?
Hey, I love your dad's one of the most genuine dudes in the sport, and I know you're busting his balls a little bit, but I deal with a lot of insincere people, so guys like Doug are gems in our sport.
He'll talk to anybody. I'm not really the social guy. I'm not afraid to talk to a group of people. Talk to my kids in my club, my parents in my club. But if I am in a grocery store and I see somebody I know, I'm not necessarily going to go find them and talk to them. But Doug talks to everybody. Literally every single youth tournament I went to, he was the last guy out every time. He's always
get Doug and Hardell Moore together. Those guys they're the governors of Minnesota and Oklahoma, respectively.
But I tell you what, I go to the World Championships and I see Kerry McCoy, and the first thing he asks is, "How's your dad doing?" Because
I get the same thing about my parents. Yeah.
So I forgot what the question was now.
Pinnacle.
But how did Pinnacle start? Yeah. So like as my dad, and we might get into it, but I was working with my dad, and I started coaching Jake and Anoka, but I saw a real talent in Deichler. I think when he was like a freshman, and started working with him more when he was a sophomore. And by the time he was a senior, it was quite a bit and coaching. But I was still working with my dad. But after the Olympics, to be honest, I remember Jared was still wrestling at that time up till 2008. And we kind of wrestled together a little bit, same club. We trained together at the University of Minnesota. I was freestyle. I was Greco. He was freestyle or whatever. But then up to 2008, he like, hey, can you help me out a little bit? And we got together. I watched his tapes and, went a couple practices, technically stuff and whatever, but very, not very much. And, but one time he was like, hey, if you're ever interested, I have this thing called Pinnacle, give me a call if you're interested in something like that. And this was, I don't know, this might've been in 2007 or something. But after Deichler, I remember the instance. I was in Mexico with my wife, and I was looking out at the ocean, and I was like, man, I love coaching and I love wrestling, and I love coaching youth, really. And I kind of decided at that time that was my passion, and that's what I want to do. And so I called Jared up, and we kind of met up and opened up a facility and went full force, went full time right away. And luckily we had a lot of good kids. Like even these guys were 10 years old, but it was like the Mitchell and Patrick and Taylor Venz and Peyton Robb and the Bergies and the Venz and the Shilsons. And we had an amazing group of kids, like right off the bat, and their parents all bought in and they all bought in. And, I went in there saying, hey, we're here to win Olympic titles. We're here to win world titles. And I know you're not supposed to say that as a club owner, right? I hear a bunch of garbage like, on Facebook, and so all these club owners are selling a dream, but hell yeah, I'm selling a dream. That's exactly what I'm selling. And I'm not a salesman. That's what I plan on doing.
We've already established you're Mr. Social, so you're just out there.
Yeah, I'm not selling you nothing. This is what's going to happen if you trust me. Yeah. That was my sales pitch, and it's not really a sales pitch. That's what I believe. And if they believed in me and I believe in them, and great things can happen. And go ahead, you have something to say.
No, you just there's a bunch of things that popped up, but no. Like, so when I was talking to your dad, what he told me, and Doug, you're saying that after you wrestled, you were done with wrestling. You had stopped being involved with wrestling for a period of time. You're working at the family construction company. Yep. And then Deichler reached out And for people that don't know this, Deitor made the Greco Olympic team as a high school senior.
Yeah.
And then his college career wasn't as good as it probably would have been because of injury. So just what people don't understand.
Yeah, he never wrestled a full year. He basically had the concussion and
right. But I mean, people shouldn't think like he was a flash in the pan or like wasn't tough for college or something. It's important to establish that. But that like, and Doug, you told me that story. So from your perspective, what was it like seeing Brandon get back into coaching? Or
it was actually the high school coach that wrestled with Brandon, Todd Springer, called me up and said, I got this kid. I don't know what to do with him. He's so good. I need Brandon. And I said, I think he's done. He doesn't want to touch the sport for a while. I need him really bad. A month went by. He called me up again. Can I call him? And I said, well, you can call him, but I'm not sure what he's going to tell you. And I don't know the exact conversation Brandon can tell you, but I think Brandon said, yeah, well, whatever. I'm not really interested now. I'm working and I'm, just leave me alone. And then finally he went up there and saw what the talent was, and then he got excited.
It's super interesting how tipping points change people's lives. Like I had Brett Metcalf on one time, and he was talking about how he was on his way to Colorado Springs to take the job when they called him to go to Iowa State. And like, your life goes on a completely different axis because of timing and a decision and things like that. And it's all that sort of universe stuff. But it's interesting, right? Like, I mean, I think wrestling people are control the controllables as much as you can, right? Like to create champions, like you can't just hope you're going to make weight. You can't just hope you're going to be in shape. You can't just hope that technique or strategy or all the other things. Where there's a lot of people that aren't in our line of work that are like, man, the world just didn't work out, bro. It's all going to be good. And we're not like that. But there are certain things that the universe just kind of does. Brandon, you said something that a coach here, he followed the same sort of platform. Like he's the coach of Wyoming Seminary now, Cornell Robinson, and he wrestled for my dad and I at Merrimack, and he was the coach at CBC. And their goal wasn't really to win state. Their goal was to make and place world and Olympic age group teams, Pan Am teams, U17s, U20s, all that sort of thing. And one of the byproducts of that process, I think, and I'm certainly interested in what both of you guys think, because you've seen it happen and I've been in your room and I want to talk about that after this, but that if your goal is this, is the world's, state's not as stressful.
Yeah.
Because it's like, hey, no matter how state goes, we're coming back in on Monday and getting ready for the age group world trials or for Western regionals or for, what's going on out in Vegas, or the central regionals, whatever it is. So, and you were fired up about I'm selling a dream, but that's part of what actually helps these kids do better in high school, right? Because not only are they getting better, but the goalposts have moved a little bit. And they're not so stressed when they go out and wrestle in February. Is that how you see it?
Yeah. I don't believe in unrealistic expectations. I mean, or goals. I believe you go after whatever you can. And, for me, I wanted to be the best in the world. And, I preach that to my kids, and not everybody can be the best in the world, but for us now, it's not just necessarily a goal to be a world champion, but that you believe in yourself, that you're you're going to become your best. So the best in the world is like a belief system, not results based, right? So if you go out there and you believe you're the best, you're not worried about wins and losses. And that's really when people get really nervous, right? I got to win. Well, when you believe you're the best, it doesn't matter. You're the best. You're not worried about wins and losses. But yeah, so if you take a loss at state, well, you got the U17 world team trials coming up, whether that's Greco or freestyle or Fargo we're training for. And that's kind of the tournaments that we train for: Super 32, the U17, U20, Fargo. And, we want them to be state champions because that's their goal as well. And some people have different goals, and we try to achieve those as best we can. And, it's the results will come. You want to be the best in the country, and a lot of times you're going to be the state champion, but sometimes you're not. It's okay. Let's go after our next one. So I think you're absolutely right. I had a goal to be the best in the world since I was, when I was in 10th grade, and I never did it, but I'm still glad that I tried, and every day I believed that I was the best, and I was training to be the best in the world. And, some really good things happened because I did have that belief and I did have that goal, and that's what I wanted to do.
I don't think you win an Olympic silver medal without believing you can win the gold medal. I mean, and obviously, I'm sure the silver is bittersweet, but I can tell you 99.99% of us would give our back teeth to have won what you won. So, it's like the greatest quote failure you can ever make is to be that high level. So it's amazing. It's amazing. There's a couple of things that I really wanted to ask either one of you guys, because just when you get to talk to smart people, there's training cycles. Like whenever I talk to the college coaches, they're always talking about training cycles. Like there's a certain event, they're like, we can't do it. It doesn't work with our training cycles. To me, they're sort of, and maybe I want to make sure I have it right. There's like a learning cycle and then like a training cycle. Like I'll just use the most recent thing right before U23s, 2 weeks out, you're not working on new technique with those guys. It's
right.
You're not showing them anything new. You're just encouraging them that they're the best. What you know now is the best. Let's just do what we do as crisp and clean and stay healthy and be in shape and that kind of stuff. Do I understand this correctly? And then if so, just broad strokes, like when is learning cycle? Like when is training cycle? Like I was at a club last night and they asked me to teach because no one's really wrestling for a couple months. So it's like, hey, we want to work on this series. So throw some mud at the wall and let's see what sticks kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's different for every person and for youth. I think we have 5 different youth groups. We have a couple high school groups. Last night we have a group really that's training for Super 32 and then P&L with Premier National League, which we're having in a couple weeks. That group we started training a little earlier, and that group we're hitting stuff really fast. Even though we just kind of started the season, we started a little bit earlier in August for them. But we have another group that's training for the high school season. So we actually have 2 different high school practices, and they're working on different things. And
so that's a perfect example, right? Like the people that are competing sooner are in training mode, and the people that are competing further out are in learning mode. Is that broad
development? And always development is the most important, I think, in our club. So, but once you get to some of those big tournaments, you want them to be ready and you want to peak them and whatnot. But we still want to develop the kids. But absolutely, there's a learning mode, and then there's a mode where you're trying to build your base conditioning, and then you're trying to build your go at it hard conditioning, different types. So it's sometimes hard with the high school kids because they go back to their high schools. But so after like Super 32, let's say all of our high school guys will really be development a little bit more, where we'll still be ready. So they're ready for the season, but we really want to hit all the technical things we can. Then again, for our high school kids right away in March, we start going to freestyle so we can be ready for, the U17s and U20s, but development right away. And then until you get close. So yeah, for sure. And the summer, it's kind of a range of both too, with Fargo and with different kids. It's just, we have so many kids, we have to tailor it a little bit different for different people. And then you have women in there as well. And for them, freestyle should be the most important. That's what's in college and that's what's in high school. So you have to frame that a little bit different as well, even in the fall, whether they're doing a little bit more, a little bit different training. So yeah, it's not an easy process. And for youth, to me, youth should be mainly developmental, especially through, 12 years old. We do go to like some of the national tournaments, but, I think 5th, 6th grade, you should start doing that. But before that, really just try to practice and still go to tournaments. But I think the development is really what we try to push. So
Doug, you're somebody that's seen it, like I look Brandon's age up and I'm a few years older than him, but we're much closer to the same generation. You're obviously somebody who's seen this with more years of experience and wisdom. Like Randy Couture is a friend of mine. He was telling me like one year he was on the world team and the USA, like 2-3 days out, was doing hard matches and the Russian team was, playing, handball, with dodgeball or whatever. And, they realize slowly this has changed, what they should be doing. As somebody who's kind of seen this for a lot of years, what do you think are like the biggest, most positive changes we've made in training?
since I do go all the way back, we used to train right up to the match. It was like, I think you could get in shape if we trained really hard the day before, and this is 40, 50 years ago. And now it's watching what works, what works in Pinnacle, what works in SIBO, what works for the guys that make these teams. And being a good learner, like Brandon said, you're always, even at my age, I'm always learning what works. And then following that suit. If it doesn't work, I don't want to do it. But if it works and it's proven it works, but that's taken, look where we're at now. That's taken 30 years to get to where we are right now, because we've had so many great coaches and great athletes before us. So now it's really studying and watching and making the improvement. Now, not as much as Brandon, because he's doing it as a full-time job. For me, it's still being in the high school and then being able to coach the juniors and the cadets, and taking whatever wisdom I have and try and work with those kids. Different philosophy for me and Brandon. I'm kind of the good guy. I'm the guy that keeps the athlete out. I'm the guy that, and when you're having a problem, I'm not going to beat you up. I'm going to talk to you and make you feel good and want you to come back.
I'm the nice guy. Everybody always thinks
I'm the nice guy.
Everybody says
Brandon
I'm the
isn't.
nice
Isn't that
guy.
great?
What would Lawrence say? What would Lawrence say, Brandon?
Lawrence thinks he's the nice guy, and he's not.
Okay. All right. I remember that when I was at Pinnacle, but we'll get there in a second.
Come on.
But get over it. I catch more flies with honey than vinegar.
Yeah.
Okay. And so it works for me. And like you asked me, how has it changed? So much. It's so much. The technique, the training. And when I was in high school, I won 6 matches on 1 point. And I was like, wow, that's great. And now we're out there just trying to score as many points as we possibly can using technique that was never around 30 years ago. Never, ever. So this is amazing and fun to watch, especially these world championships.
It is amazing, no matter how good you are. Like even somebody as good as Brandon is teaching stuff now that he never used because the sport just hadn't evolved to that point. And the best, it's always interesting, like with this person from this generation beat this person, it's like the people that were the best are going to evolve. They're going to, if you put them back in caveman days, they're going to figure out a way to win. You put them in the George Jetson days, they're going to figure out a way to win. Winners win. They're going to figure out a way to do it. So I want to talk about Pinnacle because Pinnacle's an example of a club. First of all, Brandon, I'm sure you don't remember, but I came up there with Becker and Slater a couple of years ago when we were going to do Minnesota Border Brawl. That was when it got COVIDed. That was like right COVID hit and the Nationals were canceled. You guys, it was you and Lawrence and Mac Ryder was there. And it was a very cool meeting. You hear a lot about Grant Turner is on the Weighing In podcast and loves your club, obviously, and loves you guys. Yep. So, he kind of, I think, greased the skids for me a little bit, called and said, well, I'm going to send my boy up there. Don't be too hard on him kind of thing. So I really appreciate the hospitality, having a chance to say that publicly. There's one thing that's fairly obvious that was impressive is the wall, who's won what and the names, because it wasn't like they were just great in high school. Like all these kids have gone on and done great things. But I use Pinnacle, and it's no disrespect to anybody else, but because you were an Olympian and a medalist, and because Lawrence was a national champion and an Olympic alternate, I'm just going to say this, Brandon, like when we were coming up, we're close enough to the same age. There wasn't anybody as good as you coaching kids clubs.
Yeah.
Like just period. Like that. And that's not an insult to any of those guys back then, but nobody that had the credential. Let's take you out of it. Nobody that had the credentials of Jared Lawrence. Okay. Just use him so you don't have to say anything nice or bad about yourself.
Yeah.
The credentials of a Jared Lawrence, a national champion, an Olympic alternate, a captain on a national championship team, all these kind of things. Like those guys weren't coaching kids. Like they were coaching college, they were wrestling, or they were working at a construction company. Like that was it. And I'm a business guy. I'm a financial advisor by trade. So I love the economics of things. And the fact that you guys have figured out a way to make a living doing what you love. And these kids, like the night I was in, there's like 8, 10, 12, 14, 16-year-olds. And I'm like, I left and I call my buddy. I go, there's an 8-year-old getting coached by the Olympic silver medalist. Like, it because you're seeing the results, you
Yeah.
look at an age group tournament, but just, I guess, like when you see it in reality, or let's use Lawrence, a national champion, he's coaching a 10-year-old. To me, that's the biggest development on why America is doing so well at these age group things, because more and more of the best minds of the sport, like a Ben Askren as an example with Askren Wrestling Academy, all of these guys like yourselves, and I apologize to anybody who's watching this who I didn't mention you. It's all over the country. There's people everywhere that are doing this. They're amazing. Okay. So I don't want to.
Yep.
I'll get to the question. How much do you feel like this has just developed, like literally leapfrog, just jump levels on our youth and doing so well at the U15s, U17s, U20s, et cetera?
Yeah. I mean, the club system is a lot different now. Like when I was growing up, and I had a good club growing up, but it's not the same. And not, I had Joe Russell. Everybody knows Joe now, but he moved to Minnesota and he was helping out at my club. But, I had maybe one or two workout partners that were like my ability. But then once I got to high school or a little bit older, I basically had to find workout partners. And a lot of it was, I was just going and working out. I was wrestling, now I don't think these kids really even think it's a big deal. We had what, a 6, 7, 8-year-old group last night or Monday night. When was that? Monday night. And we had 4 different guys that were all NCAA All-Americans in the room coaching, and on a Sunday, it's me and Mac and Jared and Pat Smith, if you know Pat.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of different guys, and some of our guys come back and coach them, and it's amazing. And if you look around the country, we have a thing coming up, a tournament, and it really started that way. It was Jared was friends with Jody Stripmatter, right? Who's got one of the best clubs in the country, Young Guns. And then they're like, man, we should run a tournament. We train together. And then they talked to Askren, well, there's another guy. Oh, then they talked to Eric Larkin. And then they talked to Daniel Cormier. Then they talked to Izzy. And it just, and so on and so forth. These guys are all running clubs around the country. And so the wrestling is great. And, it's not just technique. I don't think, technique is important. And these guys are obviously, a lot of them are doing it full time. And that's important that they continue to develop as well. But really they understand training as well. And they understand maybe what we talked about earlier of development. And really, we've had a lot of Zooms with some of these same guys you're talking about, where it's 8 of us talking and we all have the same type of idea that youth, we want to develop them. We want to get them better. I don't care if they win a youth national title. I don't care if they win a youth state title. Let's get them better in high school. And we're talking with each other how to do that as well. But similar ideas, let's get them to get to that world championship. Let's get them to the NCAAs. So yeah, I mean, obviously the U.S. is doing really well, and the club system, I think, has a lot to do with it. And it's great that, I'm blessed that I can do it as my job. And Jared and I have had a partnership here for like 13 years, and it's worked out well, and we love what we do. So.
Yeah. The names you mentioned are, obviously some of the leaders in the sport. And I'm not saying, I don't want to go back anybody that coached us. I don't want that to be an insult. Okay. I don't want anybody calling me and saying like, listen, anybody that's trying to help anybody get better, I have respect for, but there's certain skill levels and certain credentials. And you said it right though. Like if you're a historian of the sport, like when I walked into your room, I'm 4 years older than you. I'm still like, man, this is freaking awesome. Like this is awesome. Like I respect greatness. It doesn't matter if greatness was younger or older than me. Like greatness is greatness, and you have to respect it. These kids, as long as they're saying yes sir, no sir, and coach, they're being respectful, and they shouldn't put you too high on a pedestal because they wouldn't learn from you. Like they need to have a comfort level. So I want to jump. We talked about the 50,000 foot perspective. So we're recording this on September 14th.
Yeah.
I say that because this was a banner day for USA women's wrestling at the World Championships. 4 medals, I think 2 champions, just unbelievable. But, Doug, it's like I believe this, like a lot of people of your generation were very skeptical about women's wrestling and were, not you, but just people that age group were critical of it. And then they're like, well, okay, it'll help save men's wrestling, so I guess we'll take it. And now they realize, like, these women are unbelievable. We have, like, usually the second best team in the whole world, and we're gaining, it feels like. And, it's like Dom Parrish today, never made a world team and wins the gold medal first time on the stage. And just, so your thoughts on that, just sort of big picture.
I go back to when Jay was at the U and it was all about Title IX, and giving women more rights was taken away from wrestling, and it was taken away from all men's sports. It was like, wow, do you really want women to wrestle? And when it first came out, women were not very good. I mean, it was really hard to watch them. When they first started, I was like, they'll never make anything. I mean, they're women. And now it's so fun to watch them, and they've come so far. And now to me, it's kind of a little bit like catch up. For Minnesota, it's like catch up. For U.S., we're getting there, but Japan was pretty impressive today with where they're at with their program. And we have to kind of follow what they're doing and try and get to that level. I can only see it getting so much better. And I think it's going to take more people to buy into it. Not just the coaches, but the parents. I don't want my girl wrestling. That's a man's sport. We got to get past that and I think I saw the figures for Texas. They had like 3,500 girls out for wrestling in Texas. How does Minnesota do that? Or how does Wisconsin do that? How do we get those kind of numbers? So so much change, and so fun just to be able to watch that progress over the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah, we ran the Michigan Border Brawl back in March, tied to nationals, and we had 9 girls matches out of the 15. And it was awesome. And I probably got more kind words because of that. And we actually had the girl that won, doubled up at 180, wrestled the girl that doubled up at 200 on our card 4 months before it happened. And you never see that, like in a boys card, like that would never happen, and the interesting thing is the storylines part, like the men that are going to wrestle, like all the names, the Snyders, David Taylors, all these people that everybody knows about, the Jadens, because I'm a Missouri guy, like the storylines come out of them having wrestled in college, like even like a Zilmer, like his story, like, okay, he wasn't a college superstar and he beat Gwizdowski, who was. It's hard for these young ladies to get, like, they just pop up because nobody follows college wrestling yet because it's not big enough. But as it becomes, leaves emerging sport status and becomes a sport that's taken seriously and we can get media coverage. And my guess is that this is probably going to become, wrestling is going to become a 1 semester sport, women in the fall, men in the spring, or vice versa. But just because of mat availability and all that other stuff, and obviously academics, but it feels like overall, and again, it goes back to like the Pinnacle clubs, like girls are coming to the clubs and all the lessons that we've all learned from wrestling: win with grace, lose with humility, shake hands, work hard, be accountable, make weight, be a good teammate, stay, come in early, stay late. Those are not gender, like men should not learn those lessons any more than women should. Well, maybe men should, or, a lot of us are a pain in the butt, but in general, it's a good thing for both genders to learn those. So Brandon, I want to talk to you a little bit about Greco. So Greco is over, the tournament is over, when we're recording this, and we had one person place in the top 6, took 5th. What was going on? Like, all right, you're in charge of Greco in America. I'm just putting you in that position. What do you do? What are tangible steps? I'll give you my premise and then I'll get out of the way. I think it's going to be hard for us as a country to ever be super successful in Greco, because I think when kids grow up, one of their goals is to get a college scholarship. And when you get a college scholarship, one of the first things your college coach says is, learn how to grab legs, learn how to protect your legs. So we're not going to do that sport for like 5 years. And when you skip that sport for 5 years and you come back, there's a huge gap. That's one of my main thoughts. But as somebody that was at the pinnacle of the sport, and I didn't mean pinnacle I
like how you use that word. See that?
I didn't even mean it that way. I'm just on the air, baby. Let's go.
God,
What are your thoughts on Greco, and what would you change?
Well, what do we got a couple hours here, or what
Well,
do
we
we?
might just stream. I might just tell you we stopped, didn't tell you stop recording and just kill it.
You know, there's a lot wrong with Greco in the U.S., and you know, it's hard. Greco's a lonely sport. Even when I was doing it, it was you know, for like me and Dennis Hall, we both had to just find partners, right? We had coaches. The Storm, we had organized practices, but it wasn't always like at the beginning it was, but then not towards the end of my career. And it's a struggle, and you got to really love the sport to do it. I think now, you know, Yvonne's got a hard job, and I think he might be the best Greco coach in the country. But as a general manager, he's going to have to figure out, how are you going to get the athletes? How are you going to get the funding? And to me, it comes down to that. And then he can coach. He's a great coach. And he has great systems that work. I have no doubt in Yvonne and his system, what he wants to do, that they can work. But I have an 18-year-old kid, 17-year-old kid that's going to be a senior in high school and wants to wrestle Greco after high school. What's his options?
Yeah, I mean,
I should know more than anybody, right? I should be like, I have all the options for him, and I might end up being his training partner, you know, and I'm 50 years old. It's so he's got Northern Michigan, and you know, that's about it right now. I don't know. I can go to the U. You know, his current plan is to go to the U and just wrestle Greco, but you know, he's still open. Maybe he's going to end up playing football. I don't know, but there's no plan for guys coming out of high school to train Greco, and now essentially you grab a you know, and I was talking to Casey Cunningham about this. I was like, it's really hard after college right now to do it. And he's like, well, what if a Bo Nickel did it? Well, yeah, Bo Nickel. You can get a Bo Nickel, but how are you getting a Bo Nickel?
Well, so that's exactly what I was jumping. Like, if you look at the men's freestyle team, 8 of the 10 were college national champions, and the 2 that weren't were Gilman, who frankly was a huge favorite to win it.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, just had a bad match. I mean, Cruz deserved to win, but didn't wrestle like himself. And Zilmer, who, you know, came out of nowhere and moved up a weight class. But I mean, the rest of them, all the way up the line, Gross, Yanni, et cetera, all national champions, and a bunch of them were Hodge winners and everything else.
Yep.
You know, where Greco, and I'm not going to say anybody's name because I don't want to be disparaging, but there's guys who were D3 guys. There was guys that, you know, didn't even go to college. And so, like, the people winning nationals are not going to Greco. Like, and so the Bo Nickel thing is what you said, is would he go?
And that you don't need that. I think, like I mentioned, Bo Nickel, because if you watch Bo Nickel wrestle, he could wrestle anything, right? He could, you know, he's a guy that really has a feel for any style of wrestling. But with the current RTC system, it's impossible for Greco guys to get that, because he's getting paid somewhere between $2,000 and $5,000 or $6,000 a month, you know, before to train freestyle. Where are you getting that for Greco? You're not getting it anywhere. Right. So I got Peyton Robb coming up in a couple of years, and I want him to wrestle Greco. So somehow Greco's going to have to find that money, you know, for a guy like that, because he has a phenomenal Greco talent, and not everybody does. Like Pat Smith, he was going to be a lot better at Greco than he was at folk style. He wasn't great at folk style, but with his style, he can be great at Greco. Hancock, he was great in Greco. You put anybody out there, you put, you know, whoever you want out there, start training at 19 or 18. And I tell you what, Zilmer tried, you know, him and Zilmer battled a few times in Greco, because Zilmer was a Greco guy his first couple of years out of college. Right. So he has a phenomenal feel. Even Kamal Bay, like when he was in high school, he was the best Greco guy. Nobody was beating him. Ravon Perkins, best Greco guy, nobody's beating. So we have some, just need more. And we need those guys to be able to continue to train. You know, whether that's through college and getting an education, and not just an education or even paid for all your college, but some kind of program. We have one, Northern Michigan, but what other program do we have that they can go to school, that somebody's going to help them out with their studies, make sure they go to class, make sure they're on track to graduate, you know, and then you have a group of friends your same we need more of that. But to do that, we need funding, and, you know, we have coaches, but you need funding for coaches then as well. So, you know, there is a lot that goes into that, but, you know, and if we can get the college guys after, and some of them have great feels. Austin Gomez, I've been telling Austin Gomez, and I hope he listens to this, since he was 10 years old, I was like, you're a Greco guy. If you watch him wrestle now in NCAAs, you can see it.
Him
right?
and Anzonian are like first one to 20.
I ain't kidding. Since he was 10, I was like, you're a Greco guy. And he wrestled it a little bit, played with it, you know, but after college, he's a guy that if he wrestled for 5 years, not 1, not 2, because you see a lot of those guys, they'll try it, but then it's not easy. It's not as easy as people think. You try it for a year, it don't work, right? You look at like a Joe Warren and a Brad Veering, it's a 5-year process if you're going to go after college, and you could still learn the game, and especially if you did a little bit during college. But that's really hard with the RTC system right now, which I don't want to rip on that. It's a system that has created our world champions, and
it's working. It's working for men's freestyle and women's freestyle for sure.
Yeah, so. and you know, it's hurt Greco, but you know, if we can figure out a way to get some kind of funding towards Greco for that type of thing, I think that it's a system. It's not necessarily just and getting the athletes. So that's a few of my thoughts on it.
No, it's interesting. And I want to thank USA Wrestling, because they let me ask questions. They don't always put USA Wrestling in the greatest of light, and they've been.
them. It's not.
No, but you know what I'm saying though. When I was at track, if something was on flow, we weren't even supposed to talk about it. So it's nice to sort of like. The week before Fargo, we were told not to talk about Fargo. I'm like, there's nothing else going. We might as well not have a broadcast. There's nothing else to talk about in the middle of July. So
you know, I think that the RTC system has been great for freestyle, and you know, I love that funds are going into senior level freestyle, and that guys can continue to wrestle, and you know, it helps out wrestlers to continue to go, and it's awesome. So I don't want to think I'm bad on that. It's just we got to figure out something for Greco.
It doesn't matter if you love or hate Greco. If we're wrestling Greco, everybody in America wants us to be better at it than we are right now. Like that's Absolutely. One thing I think we all agree. So like that's not a controversial statement. And so all I was asking was, how do you think some of the things we can do to get better? So I have one last question. Doug, I'll ask you first. Same question, Brandon. I asked this question to a couple of people, and I've been very fascinated by the answer, because I think not everybody answers it the same way. So you guys have either been winners or coached winners or been surrounded by winners. If you could pick 1 or 2 traits that you saw consistently in people that were winners, whether it's in business or whether it's in wrestling, or like an unbelievable father, an unbelievable husband, like an unbelievable minister, somebody who's top of the game, what would you say those 1 or 2 characteristics or traits are, Doug?
Early on, I would say when I could take a cat and hold it upside down 5 feet off the air, and I drop it and it always landed on his feet, that cat was pretty athletic. Now it's so many of the traits that we just talked about, that you have to be a great athlete. You have to be a great student of the sport, and you just have to have the desire. So sometimes you might not be the great athlete, but when you see somebody that actually loves the sport, is willing to spend the time in the sport and go after it, you can sometimes make them that champion, even though they don't have all the physical skills like Jory has. But to find that one kid that just has that big heart, that will do anything in the world to be better, I just love that kind of a guy.
Brandon, same question.
Well, yeah, I think passion for the sport is important. You know, if we're just talking wrestling, a love of the sport, and not every winner has had a love for the sport, but man, the people I see that are successful love the sport and have a passion for it. You know, I think the people that are willing to, I talked about this before, willing to put it on the line, like willing to risk what they're doing. And that can be in jobs as well. You know, your career, are you willing to risk and put yourself out there and do everything you can possible to achieve your goal? And it might not happen, but are you willing to risk that and to do that? that type of thing. And we have I call it to be great, trying to be the best you can in whatever you're doing. And so we stress this quite a bit at Pinnacle. It's just like, be great. Whether you are in the practice room, you're trying to be great and you're trying to be better in a competition, be better than you, be as best, the best that you can, whether that's in school, you have a teacher that's trying to teach you. Are you trying to learn? Are you trying to be great? So whatever you're doing is, your best. And are you willing to give that effort to do that? So to me, that's a big thing.
Well, the time has flown. I thought it would. I've truly enjoyed it. I'm a person that loves the sport, and I get to do 2 podcasts a week, one where we talk about everything and one where I get to talk to really smart guys and gals. And this is my favorite thing I do in the week, because I get to talk to people that are really, really good. And the term I use a lot with the guests are they're intellectually generous. So I want to thank you guys both for people, not everybody, some people do the Derek Jeter and the Tom Brady and you don't really get anything from them. And so I know the folks that I'm friends with that watch this, and there's people around the country that come up to me and say, hey, the interview with so-and-so was really great. It's because those people share. And so I think the people that have the credibility that you guys do and you share, it means a lot to all of us. So I want to genuinely thank you guys. I know you're both busy. I know you took time out of your days. I hope you enjoyed it half as much as I did, because I had a great time.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you,
Guys,
David.
watching and listening. We'll speak it all next week.
Bye, Dad.
Bye.